I don't think I realized my relationship with fragrance until after I started doing what I'm doing, how much I am emotionally moved by smells and environment and light and all of these different things.
I don't know about you all, but fragrance is incredibly personal for me. And so I was a little hesitant, to be honest, to have an episode that seemingly centered around fragrance. Now, before you turn away, this episode is so much more than about perfume, but because of its personal nature, I was afraid of how it would transition to audio. But I also felt really strongly about sharing it because the brand founder that I'm having on today, Rosie from By Rosie Jane, this brand has a very special place in my heart because Rosie was the fragrance I just happened to discover right before I became pregnant. So it was the fragrance I wore all throughout my pregnancy. I distinctly remember sitting in front of my vanity, putting on my makeup for my bridal shower. I remember the dress I wore. I remember the lip gloss I wore, and I remember applying the fragrance. I even brought the little oil roller with me in my bag at the hospital, and still to this day, it's the fragrance I wear the most. I am not someone who wears a new fragrance all the time. I don't have one for every day. I have maybe 2 or 3 that I alternate between depending on my mood. To me, this brand was just something so special, and we talk a lot in this episode about what quote unquote clean fragrance means, and fragrance is one of those areas where I do think that there's some validity to the quote unquote clean argument. Now, it's still an unregulated term. Each brand has their own definition of what that means. But for me personally, I didn't want a lot of synthetic fragrance around my daughter because she's so young. I just felt it was unnecessary, and my husband will vouch for this. I'm always making him hide his cologne. I'm like, you don't need to be spraying that when it's just us and her here. She doesn't need to be around it. So all that to say, I really have a special place in my heart for this fragrance, for this brand, and honestly now for Rosie, because our conversation was so meaningful. As I mentioned, it goes so far beyond just fragrance. We're not just talking about perfumes here. We talk a little bit about perfume talk, what it is, and how crazy this evolution of perfume talk has become. We talk about, like I said, clean fragrance. We talk about functional fragrance. We also talk about just starting a beauty brand and how so many of our memories in life really direct our life choices. So all that to say, this is actually one of my favorite recordings of all time, so I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I do. And without further ado, here is Rosie. So I like to start off by asking every guest, what is your first beauty memory?
Gosh, probably my mom and doing her rollers in the bathroom and hot rollers and showing me how to do it. I think that's probably a core memory for me. The smell of Aquanet hairspray.
Yeah, I think for most people when they answer, it has to do something with the mother figure in their life. I think that's just so beautiful and probably one of the reasons we all love beauty so much without even realizing it.
Yes,
So,
it's true.
I have to tell you because your team had reached out introducing you, but I know the brand very well. Actually, Rosie is my favorite fragrance of all time. So much.
Yay.
Yeah, I love it. So much so, I was initially introduced to it. I think I got it at Sephora before I became pregnant. So I wore it throughout my whole pregnancy. It's just that really feminine, such a light scent. Beautiful.
Yes.
And I loved it so much that when my daughter was born, I was considering naming her Josie. Rosie. Her name is Josie. I was in between Josie and Rosie. And because I loved the scent so much, and now it's still on my list, but I'm like, I have a Josie, so if we have a second girl, I can't also name her Rosie. But I thought it was really full circle.
And I created it when I was pregnant.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes. That was I mix it because I had terrible morning sickness. And the smell of anything made me feel nauseous. I don't know if you had morning sickness, but anything, and luckily it didn't go on for a long time, but everything made me feel just icky. And so when I was creating, I was like, what? I was in the middle of doing something and I had this obsession with the feeling of clean and fresh. And I would carry a bar of soap around with me from Crabtree and Evelyn, that was their rose. And I would just smell it throughout the day when I was pregnant or through all my pregnancies. So when I created Rosie, it was that. It was like, I wanted something that didn't smell like anything recognizable. And I just wanted it to feel clean and relaxing and something that would make me feel comforted. So that was Rosie. So I love that you loved it when you and
That is
discovered it when
so
you were pregnant.
funny. There must be something there. Must be something about the chemistry of being pregnant or something, but I loved it. I
Yes.
wore it every day during my pregnancy. So I love it.
Amazing.
So I want to get obviously to the fragrance, but let's talk a little bit about your career journey. You are a former celebrity makeup artist, is that
Hmm.
correct? How did
Correct.
you get here? What was your career journey like?
So gosh, so I started doing makeup when I was about 19 in Australia. I went to makeup school. I had dropped out of high school, and my parents were like, "Okay, we have to do something." And I was like, "Oh, in drama when I was in high school in year 11, I was like the makeup artist for the school play." And I was like, "Oh, you know what? I love that. So I'm going to go to makeup school." So I did that. I graduated from makeup school and then I left and I lived in London. Started doing like photo shoots like we all do, like test shoots. This is old school days, right? So there was no Instagram, no social media. I just did a bunch of, I worked with Storm Modeling Agency. So I would do all of their new faces that came in. And then I came to LA for my 21st birthday, fell in love with LA, met my now partner, Chad. We have 3 children together. But I moved back here and I did a TV show called Undressed, which was on MTV. It was a terrible TV show. The name says it all. It was a bunch of like college kids in their dorms, always in their underwear. That was the idea of it. It was so ridiculous. But and I did that show and I did a couple of other shows. I did Ally McBeal and I was just like, didn't love the TV world. So I found an agent, moved out, did celebrity makeup artistry, right? So I did red carpet and I did photo shoots, which I loved. And I had so many wonderful clients, and I did that and continued to do that until really 20, 2019 when By Rosie Jane launched into Sephora. But that sort of whole journey, and I think when you're a makeup artist, you're in people's space in a very personal way, like a hairdresser.
Hmm.
You're very aware of the way that you smell and the impact that you're going to have on people around you. I wanted a calling card. I wanted to be like the celebrity makeup artist that people were like, "Ooh, book me that makeup artist that smells so good." It was like I wanted that, and that's how I created my first fragrance, which is now Layla Lou. And my career, I feel like in both being an entrepreneur and in makeup, followed this very kind of organic, because it was as opportunities were presented to me, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to take this opportunity and kind of run with it and see where it goes. And then I retired from doing makeup in 2019 officially, and here we are today.
I have a question for you. So I've actually had a couple of celebrity makeup artists on the show, and I think they were all on because they were brand founders of a brand that I love, and they all say, "Oh, the clients I had were so amazing." Is that true, or do you have to say that? Because I
I
can
mean, I think
imagine
for
in
some
that
people,
space.
get total
I'm a
people.
cosmetic provider in Miami, so I know how people are.
Yes. And listen, honestly, you do get the odd person that kind of comes into your space that is not amazing. But the greatest thing about being a freelancer is that you can choose not to go back. So it's not like this is my everyday job and I'm like locked in. If I ever worked with someone that I was like, I just didn't feel like we vibe, there was, for whatever reason, they tried to book me again, I would just be like, tell my agent, I'm not going to do that again. So you end up being able to almost build this environment that is incredible. I only wanted to work with people that I enjoyed working with, that I was either inspired by what they were doing, loved being in their space. No one wants to spend 8 hours a day around an asshole.
Hmm.
So
Yes. And I think good people attract good people. So not only do you put out that energy, but then also I'm sure your clients are then referring their friends in the industry. And if they're a
yeah,
decent person, oftentimes people they spend time with are as well. So that's nice that you really do have the freedom to build who you're spending your time with. And we know that's so important.
and I'm a very laid back person. So I think the clients that I ended up having also were very laid back. And that's what I loved. It was just, and it becomes like a real friendship. It's such a personal relationship with your makeup artist. And at any given time, we're not only spending days together, but when you're traveling, you're spending weeks together. I'm there 6 a.m. in the morning and I'm there 10 o'clock at night because I'm putting on makeup and then I'm coming back and I'm taking it all off. And you become sort of each other's therapist as
Yeah.
well.
And it's very personal. Like you said, when you're in that environment as the client, you're taking calls, you're doing meetings, you're living your life right there in the seat. So I can
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah.
So you
And
would,
you want to trust that person a lot.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that's difficult. And that's probably why there's like a select group of celebrity makeup artists that do a lot of celebrities, because once you gain the trust, you've circled around, I'm sure. So you would have to remove their makeup as well.
Yeah, yeah, especially if you're doing like on tour or something like that. It's really part of that process. I would definitely be like, come back and I'm gonna remove everything, press junkets even. Some people would leave with makeup on, but when you have had makeup on all day, it's exhausting. Your eyes feel heavy. And we're talking like lashes. And especially for men, when I did grooming as well, they do not want to be like, yeah, I'm just going to go out into the world with a full face of makeup on. So it's like the meditative part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned wanting to smell great for your clients and them to know you by that, and you concocted this first fragrance. Did you know it was going to become a brand, or was it just something you were doing for yourself?
I 100% had no idea it would become a brand, and it was something I was literally doing for myself. It was nameless. And then people started to ask me for it, and that's where it grew. And it's so funny, I posted just on my story the other day, I was going through my makeup, all of the collections of bottles and stuff that I have for fragrance. And I found one of the original bottles that I made and gave to all of my friends and family for Christmas in 2008. So I had this fragrance that I was wearing. People would ask me for it. And then I had my daughter in 2007. And that's how that kickoff of the clean thing happened, because I was wearing this fragrance. She was touching it. But I hand typed all these labels. I stuck them onto the bottles, and it says Layla was the name of it, filled or hand filled by Rosie Jane. That's how the name came about, December '08. And I put it for Laurie, which was my sister-in-law at the time. But yeah, it's crazy. So no, I did not think it would lead me to where I am now, where I have 8 fragrances and in Sephora, and it feels crazy. I have that saying on my wall, which is, I remember when I wished for the things that I have now. And I very much live in that mental space.
Yeah, me too. And you actually mentioned something, just following the flow of where life led you. I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Surrender Experiment, but it's very much about that. Just how when you surrender to life, it will present you with the opportunities that you're meant to pursue. And it really doesn't have to be so difficult. Of course, there's hardships and we have to put effort and we have to work hard, but life will present you with exactly where you're meant to go. So I love that
And
mentality too.
it's also the things that you don't realize that are an opportunity while they're happening, right? Sometimes the things that are opportunities or creating the opportunity are not great, right? They're not. I think people assume when you say that, they're just like, oh, so what? Doors just open everywhere for you? And you're like, no, this door opened because of something horrible that happened before, right? So it was, oh, had that not happened, this wouldn't have come up. And you just have to be open-minded, I think, and try not to get too negative with it, and know that every opportunity is hopefully presenting something new, or every experience.
Yeah. So when you so walk me through the timeline of kind of you creating these fragrances at home. First of all, what made you want to do that? Do you have anyone in your family that does this, or how did you even know how to make fragrance or put fragrance together?
No, I didn't. You know what's crazy is that I don't think I realized my relationship with fragrance until after I started doing what I'm doing, how much I am emotionally moved by smells and environment and light and all of these different things. My mum always wore perfume. My grandma always wore perfume. I keep both of the perfumes that they wore on my dresser, and I can't wear them. They're too strong for me, but I just smell them in the bottle. And it reminds me immediately of them. It's like when I think of my mum, I think of hot rollers, I think of arpege, and I think of Aquanet hairspray. Very fine mist. The actually it was the gold one that you couldn't get in the US forever, and I cannot remember the name of it now. It that my association with scent is so deep that now I'm like, oh, I'm not surprised that I love perfume and that I'm doing it. I'm creating experiences. But yeah, It's crazy journey.
This episode is brought to you by .com is your one-stop shop for all things skin, hair, and beauty. I have countless blog posts to educate you on all the skin concerns and most common skin questions I receive. We also have a complete skincare basics guide on our shop page, as well as the cutest In My Skin era crew necks. If you want to support the show, please head over to skinthusiast.com/shop, and don't forget to rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts. I love that you said that, because that's actually one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, because I feel that way strongly, and I don't have a lot of fragrance. I get gifted a lot, and most of it I give away because I'm not one of those people who has a fragrance for different days or different. I like what I like, and I wear the same thing over and over. I have maybe one more masculine night scent, and then I have Rosie, which is what I wear most days. And I've always been that way. I feel very like nostalgic over scents. I can, in my mind, I know the scent of my aunts, my mom's. I know all those scents. And when we go home, my husband and I are both from Ohio. When we go home for the holidays and we walk into someone's house and it's that same familiar scent, it's so comforting to me. So I feel very strongly that way about scent as well. And in my industry, and obviously in yours too, in the skincare and beauty space, fragrance is a controversial topic, right? So tell me what exactly makes it a clean fragrance. What does that mean? What does clean mean to you and to the brand?
It's so crazy because this whole clean conversation has changed a lot, right? And so when I very first making now what is called clean, which I didn't even use that terminology at the time. For me, I had created this fragrance, which was Layla Lou now. And when I had done it, you couldn't buy fragrance notes anywhere. You can get them now, you can get them on Amazon, you can get them farmer's market, whatever. So that's literally what I did, not through Amazon, but you order these individual notes. And I'm building and I'm wearing this fragrance, and I had a baby, and I was like, dude, I don't even know what the hell's in this product. Like, I know that it's pear and jasmine and fresh cut grass and the notes that I put in there. But I was like, this is like a liquid oil. Like, what is in here? And you cannot find that information on an individual note. And at that time, not in any way. So that kind of kicked off this idea. What goes in fragrance? How does it work? Why does it do this? All of these points. And then when I started to sort of educate myself and learn, and for me, it's more unnecessary ingredients, right? Stuff that makes a fragrance last from 6 hours on the skin to 14 hours on the skin. And I was like, why does that exist? Why would anyone need your fragrance to last 14 hours without reapplication? Preservatives, making it be able to sit on shelf for 3 years. Just all of these kind of like pieces that I was like, gosh, is it easy? And can I reproduce a fragrance without those parts? And that's how it opened up to me in that clean world. But now clean, really thanks to, I always give Sephora the credit for this. They put the initial parameters around that. This is the idea of it. We had been doing it for a while. I think we were the only clean fragrance on the market when we launched, right, in 2010. But then when we launched into Sephora, we were a collective, right, one of 6 brands. And they really helped define that for consumers in a wonderful way. And it just means the removal of certain ingredients that I think are unnecessary, certain toxins, certain hormone interrupters, preservatives, some allergens, right, that are really high allergen, skin irritants, stuff like that. And also polluters, like waterway polluters. That also falls into clean. So that's where it started. And then for me now, to me, clean, that word, if I see a brand that's clean, it generally means to me that someone who is more invested in what their product is going to leave behind, what it's going to do to their consumer on the long term, and their practices, their responsible practices. It tends to mean a few different things, not just purely ingredients.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my audience will have heard me say this many times. There is no true definition of what clean means. That's why I like to ask brand founders who have a quote unquote clean brand. And they'll also know that, when it comes to my skincare and beauty, it's not something I'm really, if a fragrance is quote unquote clean or not, it's honestly something I don't even many times know when I pick it up. It's not because I strongly believe as a derm provider that the ingredients that we use on our skin largely are safe. The reason I'm saying this is because fragrance is one of those spaces where I do think it's a little bit more important, because we do have some data on synthetic fragrances. So it's something that always makes me more comfortable, especially as you mentioned with a new baby. It's something that they're laying all over you, they're on top of you. You want to make sure that if anything's getting near them, that it's on the safer side.
And with fragrance, what the biggest difference between fragrance and any other industry was this idea that you couldn't really see what was in your product. Right? So you had the choice, whether in skincare or hair care or any of those things, you were able to look on the back and do some research and be like, you know what? I'm going to choose not to use this product. Whether or not you think it's good or bad,
yes,
irrelevant. You still are given
yes,
the choice.
It's your prerogative. And
with fragrance, you just had this blob word that started to get this buzz, like, oh, what's in fragrance, blah, blah, blah. And it was really hard. You had to really dig. And even then you couldn't get the answer. So you weren't ever able to make a personal choice about what you wanted to use and what you didn't want to use. So that also for me signifies, like, should fall into that clean category is the transparency, right? I want to be transparent. I have nothing to hide. And then you can question anything you want in it, but at least you have the choice to be like,
absolutely. You have the information and you can make a choice. I agree with you 100%. So you mix everything in-house still to this day, not in your house, but in-house at the brand. Yeah. And you own 100% of the supply chain. So tell me what that means and how that's even possible, because that's pretty cool.
It's crazy. So I think because of the way that I started By Rosie Jane, which is different to the way brands are started today. When you start brands, you've just got to hit the ground running, right? Instagram's got to be perfect. Website's got to be perfect. When I started, there was barely people selling from their own .coms. There was certainly no social media. I think there was MySpace. I had a MySpace page, which was really embarrassing.
I did too, and I wasn't allowed, and my parents found out, and I was in so much trouble.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And you could like brand the back, right, with all the logo and stuff.
And you could have a song playing in the background and pick your top friends. And
oh my gosh,
what a time to be alive.
Oh God. So that's why I had this room to make mistakes and play, and I didn't have any money either. So when you would go to someone to be like, hey, I have this great idea and I want to make it, they'd be like, perfect, you can order 10,000 units. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't really have anyone to sell it to yet. It started so small, literally at my kitchen table in my house. I would mix and blend fragrance and then be able to pack up and ship to independent stores. And as we became bigger, I was able to maintain that and hold on to it and work with amazing fragrance houses and amazing suppliers of raw material suppliers, and really be like, okay, where does this come from? How are you making this? The fragrance house that I work with, they would let you know that I pepper them with probably 50,000 questions a day. I'm like, I just read something on this ingredient and I want to know about this one. So that's what that means to me. I know where everything's coming from. I have got all of the questions answered that I need answered. And then we are able to blend and make that beautifully in our warehouse in Los Angeles.
And how do you choose the names? Because I think the names are my favorite part. The names and the packaging. I saw your team sent over some information and it said the white t-shirt of fragrance, I think. Is that what it
Yeah, that's it. The blue jeans and the white tee of fragrance.
I love that because it's so clean, not only in the scent, at least for my favorite, which is Rosie, but the packaging. It's so beautiful and simple. How did you come up with the idea of keeping it so simple, and how do you come up with the names?
So the first names are my children. Layla Lou is my eldest. I have Matilda, who is Maddie, and then I have William James, who is James. But I tend to name them after people or things that have inspired me. That's where they come from. So Rosie is obviously named after me. I made it when I was pregnant. It was really the fragrance that was all about me, but like Lake is named after Lake Tahoe. So I really keep them it's like very personal to me. Dulce was because it is sugar. It's like vanilla, sweet, gourmand. So I want that sort of sugary fragrance, and I wanted it to sound almost like a name as well.
That was my first reintroduction like back into vanilla fragrance, because obviously vanilla fragrance had a moment in like the 90s, and then after that I never had it again. And then I got Dolce and I was like, "Oh wow, this is like sophisticated vanilla."
Oh, yeah, it makes me so happy because that's what I wanted. It's like the 90s is my era, right? I was born in 76 and I was in LA in 97, I think. 90, yeah, 97. And it was the grunge era. So we were like Nirvana-ing and we all looked like really like we had rolled out of a dumpster with all of our grungy clothes. We were all wearing pure essential oils. So you're like, at the farmer's market and it was like Nug Champa, right, was the incense everyone was burning. Oh my God, it was just everything smelt really good. But that's why I wanted to make a vanilla that you immediately recognize but didn't feel cheap and nasty, which it had really from the 90s to the 2000s, vanilla had really done that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to name brands, but like you think of that like vanilla room scent that you find at that big box store.
Yes, and it just becomes everywhere. And then, but the casual approach is because that's how I am in my life. So blue jeans, white tee, just that's how I live. I'm very laid back. I have this Australian upbringing, Sydney upbringing, and then now I live in LA, right? These are two very laid back cities, all about being outdoors, all beautiful lighting, right? I love like understated beauty, I think is what it is. That really appeals to me. And it's who I was as a makeup artist too. I was really known for that. Look like yourself, just a little bit better, a little more enhanced with natural makeup. So yeah, and I design so much of By Rosie Jane, basically all of it. And I think that that's why it stayed so personal to me.
I have to tell you, just listening to you explain your whole ethos and the brand, it makes so much sense to me now why I've been so attracted to it all these years, because that is very much how I operate my life. That's how I view makeup. That's how I view style, all of it. So it's funny. Every once in a while, I look back on my whole career and getting here and having a podcast. And it's just crazy, these full circle moments for me, because obviously when I started wearing the brand, I had no idea who you were or really who the brand was. It was just, I like the way this smells and it feels like me. So I just love
Well,
it.
yay, I
love
love
it.
that.
Very full circle.
Yeah. And fragrance was always formal. It was always pushed as this formal thing. And when we did it, I was like, I'm not a formal person. I just want it to feel, you can dress it up, but you can just wear it in your everyday life.
And this may not make sense, but this is the best way I know how to word it, is sometimes I would feel the way I was dressing, it was almost like the scent I had was too complex. Like I needed something pared down that was exactly more casual and fit with the way of my style. My everyday look is not done in any way. So it felt odd to put on these very almost like overpowering fragrances. I don't know if that makes sense. But.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And that's how I create every fragrance of By Rosie Jane. It's always, I love to say they're like the morning after fragrance because I want it to feel like when you pick your jacket up the next day and you're like, oh God, I love this fragrance. And you can smell what you were wearing. I love that softness of fragrance. But I want to get it obviously in the immediate. I don't want you to have to wear your fragrance for a day to achieve it. So yeah, that's it.
Very effortless.
Yes, that's my goal. Everything I would love to feel effortless.
Yes. What's the best seller for the brand? I'm curious.
It really, Rosie and Dulce kind of do this neck and neck, right? One overtakes, but those two definitely. And then now, of course, Missy.
Yeah, tell us about that one. I haven't smelled it yet, but they did send it. I have to open it and smell it.
Yay.
What's it about? What's Missy's story?
So Missy is really, for me, inspired by just happiness and pure joy. I stumbled onto this idea that I wanted to create a fragrance that was about the moments in between. I was going through this box of pictures. My mum kept so many photographs, like ridiculous amounts of photographs. And I'm going through, you're trying to sort through, what am I keeping? What am I not keeping? And as I'm going through, I'm thinking to myself, okay, here's the picture of the birthday party and everyone's posing. But in this roll of 25, there are all of these pictures out of focus, someone's hand, someone laughing, glass of wine. And I was like, these moments are actually everything that led up to this one perfect like photograph that are the most important parts, right? It's like when the candles wouldn't light and the bottle of wine had fallen over, and I was like, there's so much experience and so much life in these moments that don't get the photograph or the perfect moment. And that's what started this idea of Missy. I wanted to create something that was like, stop and smell the roses. Remember that where all of your experiences are as important as just these big kind of ones that we talk about on social media or whatever. But I wanted it to feel like joyfulness, like happiness. And that's where I just randomly had this kind of, this is what I want to create. And then I started down the road of mixing. And so Missy is that. It reminds me so much of Australia. It's very summery. A lot of people say it smells like pina colada, right? So you've got all of these pineapple, coconut, frangipani. It always has this beautiful soft skin musk at the bottom. But I think the way people have been experiencing it is the way I intend. It just makes you smell it and it's hard not to smile, right? It just smells so good and it has so many amazing memories tied through it that, yeah, it's been incredible.
That's amazing. And what is that process like so you're looking through the box of pictures and at some point a light bulb goes off that you maybe want to try to encapsulate this moment into a fragrance. Are you already thinking about what some of the notes will be?
I try to, but I normally do. So I'll be like, you know what, I love this idea of what I want it to feel like more than anything, more than smell like. And then I have to go on my own deep dive. I will do a visual mood board and then I'll write like a brief, almost like a diary entry to myself. And that's where I landed. It was like, what is like my best friend's childhood home smell like when I would spend the night at her house? What is my mum smell? What does vacation in Queensland what do all of these things smell like? And that's how I narrow it down. But again, with Missy, sometimes where I start and where I end up are very different. So yeah,
I'm sure
I have to just go with it.
Yeah, there's beauty in the process too. I feel like all those minute changes that you make along the way, those combinations are what make the final product.
Yeah, when I was creating Dulce, I originally was inspired by this whole 90s vibe and wanting to create like small things that felt like easy and laid back after what we had just gone through with the pandemic. So I was going to create a trio of fragrance, right? Like a sandalwood, a citrus, and a vanilla. And I was working on that. And when I was doing it, I became obsessed with just this vanilla part of it. And that's when I was like, I would love to add like a little bit of like grunge, like rock and roll to this vanilla. And that's how Dulce was born. I knew what I was trying to get the feeling of, and that's where I have to remain open. What do I want to feel? And is this making me feel that way as opposed to what do I want to smell?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen this term being thrown around, and I don't know, I'm sure you know about perfume talk, and there's so much content fragrance, which is just so wild to me. But I've heard some talk about functional fragrance, and I to be honest, have no idea what that means. So can you school us a little bit and tell us?
Yes. Okay, so functional fragrance for me, which I am personally obsessed with this technology. I think in very basic terms, all fragrances are probably technically functional because you're creating them to bring about the sense of a mood. But scientifically, what a functional fragrance is meant to do is to enhance or promote certain emotional well-being, right? Like Missy is actually a true functional fragrance. And this is this amazing technology that really plucks the molecules that exist in these particular areas that we know make us feel a certain way. So the beach, for instance, there's something within the air with these certain molecules that make us feel a sense of calm, joyful, whatever you're feeling at the beach side. And they can recreate that creates the same pings in our brains and put it to a fragrance, right? So that's where it's so incredible. And the association between smell and cognitive emotion is just undeniable. And that's where functional fragrance kind of falls. But you also have aromatherapy. That would technically be functional fragrance. You have true scientific molecule-based functional fragrance. And then you have, there's the other one, and I can't remember the name of it. It's basically the science of not just essential oils, but aromas and your association with smell. Smelling pineapple, smelling coconut are supposed to do this and this. But it's new. It's brand new and it's so fascinating. And I do body care as well for By Rosie Jane. And we really play in the aromatherapy functional fragrance. So we did a lot of research on certain notes that will promote certain feelings within essential oils. And we did these blends. We have wake, we have calm, we have chill. Because over the pandemic, when I created body, I loved fragrance and I wore fragrance every day. But that experience in the shower or getting ready in the morning before fragrance was different for me. And I wanted it to feel in the morning like the beginning of my day, and at night I wanted there to be this full stop. So yeah, it crosses lots of boundaries, but functional fragrance is really an exciting advance and technology that's just starting in fragrance.
Have you seen, speaking of perfume talk, have you seen that impact your business at all? People obsessing over fragrance on these social media platforms?
Absolutely. I think for us, it's more about brand awareness, right? Have really worked with our community. What was crazy to me is how many people were aware of By Rosie Jane, but before we were sort of engaging and talking, now how many people now are talking about it. But absolutely. It's exciting and wonderful, but I think like anything, it's always about how genuine it can be. And that's where what I love is that so many of the people talking and doing perfume talk and all that kind of stuff are really talking about stuff that they either love or don't love. That I think it goes both ways. So yeah, it's been an amazing experience for us.
And fragrance is so personal that I'm sure people who love and hate the same exact fragrance like 10 times over, it's such a personal experience. And that's actually one thing I find hard about fragrance, and maybe you can give some advice to the audience. In this world where we buy everything online, everything, how do you recommend shopping for fragrance?
I think online is fine now, right? I think we're used to it. Read the reviews, of course, but I think there's these incredible, like we do sampling, so you can buy discovery sets. It's so easy to do that. You're going to get all of these little mini samples. You're going to be able to smell and buy it. I still love the idea of in-person shopping for fragrance. It's such, because you cannot read a note and imagine what it's going to smell like. Even if it says vanilla, which we all know what it smells like really, but there are thousands of different interpretations of that one note. And it might be sweet, it might be green, it might not be at the top, it might only be a base note. I think it is something you have to experience in real life. So whether that's ordering samples and doing it at home, ordering travel sprays, however you want to do it. But I think in real life is still the best.
Yeah, I actually am a huge fan of the discovery sets because then you have travel fragrance too, and you don't have to worry about bringing your full size anywhere. I do that often.
And niche fragrance is more now about collection lines anyways. When you're going to do like a discovery set, you're guaranteed you're going to like probably more than one.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And then you get layering and you can live in them for these little samples probably have at least 2 or 3 wears in them. So you really get to be able to experience it in your everyday life.
Yeah, absolutely. If someone's new to the brand, this is a hard question, but is there like a universal fragrance that you feel like most people love that you would recommend to start with?
Rosie or Dulce, literally. Those two are, and you can layer them together, so you could buy both. But I think
really?
that
I have to try that.
Yes,
I don't
it's
ever
so good.
layer.
By the way,
I never layer. I need to experiment with that.
I love layering because it takes two of my, but you've got to be able to do it with the right kind of notes. But yeah, Rosie, by the way, will layer with anything. That's what I love so much about it.
That's another reason I love it too, is I don't worry about it being on my clothes. I'm someone who wears a top a couple times before I wash it, so I don't worry about staying on there. And then if I wanted to wear a different fragrance that night or whatever, I don't have to worry about it not melding well with what's on the clothes.
Yes, it's the best. But yeah, I love layering. And the perfume oils. So we do perfume oils, which is actually how we started before eau de parfum. And they, to me, are the best layerers with an eau de parfum. So instead of spraying 2 different perfumes, you would do your perfume oil and then layer it with an eau de parfum. And it creates just this perfect marriage between the two. One sits very close to the skin and one gets much more on your clothes and becomes lighter. But yeah. I love it.
That's a great tip. I love that. What's next for the brand? Anything coming down the pipeline that you're excited about?
I am working on my next fragrance
Oh,
already, which is
already?
kind of
That's
crazy.
amazing.
Already, I know. Missy is out in the world now. I feel like my child has gone to college. She's there. So yeah, I'm already starting on the next one. Um, but also this year for us is really this focus on functional fragrance, the joy of perfume and body care, right? I'm so excited about the expansion for us into body. And we do it in different fragrances on purpose. Like it's a deliberate kind of line in the sand where we're like, these are not ancillary products. This is not your favorite fragrance that you can just get in 50,000 different products. This is really about being mindful, and it's a different experience for your body, for your skin, and for your shower. But yeah,
That's so
that's where we
interesting.
are.
I haven't really seen a brand take that approach because usually, as you mentioned, it's just I'm going to create 5 products that all smell like this, 5 products that all smell like this, so that whatever your favorite scent is, you can buy everything. But I love that approach. That's really unique and really cool.
Yeah, I'm excited because it should be, right? I love perfume so much. I don't necessarily want every single product to smell the same way. As I said, the shower, the personal care kind of moment for me, I want it to feel different, especially when I'm going to bed at night or having that kind of first burst in the morning. I'm a morning and a night showerer. I try not to do both in the same day, but it just depends on my mood. So now it's like I need something for it.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so a couple of wrap up questions. I always like to wrap up by asking, what is your holy grail beauty product?
Of course, perfume.
How could it not be?
How could it not be? But that and mascara.
What brand? What's your favorite mascara?
I love Merit.
Oh, yeah, it's a great
Yeah, I
brand.
love their
They've got
mascara
some real
because,
hits.
and when you're talking like clean mascara, there are a lot of good ones, but they drop throughout the day, right? They like, and Merit, that stays so
Okay,
good. My
I'm
favorite.
gonna link that below. And if someone was just starting out a beauty brand, what is some advice you might give them?
Love what you're doing, love the product that you're creating. And I think the most important thing today, because it is so flooded, right? Like we all know there's so much, is make sure you have something to say. Make sure you're doing something that's meaningful, that's different, and that you're like, you know what? I feel like I could do this better or differently. Otherwise, you're just adding to an already flooded market. And I feel like that's where you're probably not going to find success. And even for us now, people are like, why don't you do this? And why aren't you doing that? And I'm always like, because I don't have anything to say about it. I don't, I just want to do the products that I know that that I have an opinion on in one way or the other. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and
I
start
think
small.
it's easy. Yeah. And I think it's easy to get lost in the noise, as you mentioned. There's just so much, and if you don't have something to say, you're gonna get lost. Absolutely.
Yes. And you're just coming up against so much money and so much celebrity as well now. So it has to stand out from the pack in some way. So yeah.
Absolutely. And very last question, if you could tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Mm, gosh, there are so many things. Probably just to believe in the process, right? It's know that exactly what we spoke about, right? That not every failure is technically that. It's really an opportunity to keep going. So yeah, and not stress the small things.
I think that's a great note to end on. So thank you so much, Rosie, for joining us today. I really loved that conversation, and I hope that the audience will check out the brand because, like I said, there's something very special about these scents. It's really not your like run of the mill perfume. So thank you for taking the time to share it with us.
Thank you. I love hearing that, and thank you so much for having me on it and let me waffle on about perfume.
Of course. Thank you. I hope you all enjoyed that episode with Rosie. There were so many life lessons there, and I don't know if it's my time of the month or what, but I actually started to get emotional during that conversation just because I think we all have such a tie to fragrance and what it means for our past, our future, the memories that it brings up. So I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. And next week's episode is going to be a really exciting one. You guys are going to really love it. So I'll talk to you next week, Skin Enthusiasts.